It is my pleasure to introduce this breakout session. So again, my name is Ann Helmke, and I do have a few extra, but I scattered them among your chairs, didn't have enough for every chair. I have a few more, but we're all adults in this room. So the basic information about the campaign that's being talked about today is called Property with a Purpose. And that information, not rocket science, utilizing available acreage to build affordable, accessible, available housing on refitting buildings that already exist that aren't being used, like behemoth congregational buildings that are no longer being used. We all know about those. That's basically it. And we're moving that campaign forward. We just found out yesterday, right, Mark? What is it, California? And what's it called? What was this full name of it? California. Is it about specifically property with a purpose? Mm-hmm. California Bill 4, as in the entire state of California, of course, is working towards supporting and implementing this across their entire state, right? We're trying to do it here in San Antonio. There's another slimmer piece of information. Those are examples, right, that exist or out there. So those are the basics. I do have a few more I'll come through right now, shortly, and hand out the few more that I have. Otherwise, you're going to share. You're going to take some off other chairs, whatever you can do. Okay? Great. Is there anything else I need to mention?
Yes. Nope.
Yes.
I'm going after you, so I'm not going to repeat.
That's why I need you.
Anybody need Spanish? Interpretation? ASL. Thank you for reminding me. All right. Yeah, I think, yes, there will be a Q&A in the last 15 minutes. So just hold your questions, write them down, and be ready, okay? I do want to say one more thing. We're looking at one example today. That's what's being shared with you. How one congregation and how the collaboration is working to make that happen. We have another example in the room, and you might know of it. So I'm going to really make him stand this time. But Edward, he's in the back row. But he is leading the Town Twin villages on the east side. Those for homeless and those who are disabled. And over the age of 50. So I've been bartering with him about a unit, just so you know. And even I didn't have to go far into it. And he goes, I know what you're talking about. You know, he was like, I know where you're going. So there are other examples that are done in different ways. In fact, they're probably all done in very different ways. So I'm going to leave it to the panel, and I'm going to hand it over now to Mark Carmona. He is the Chief Housing Officer for the City of San Antonio. And that's what I'm going to do. It's all yours. You can introduce him.
Thank you, Ann. How about a round of applause for Ann Helmke? So happy to be with y'all today to talk about this really important topic. My name is Mark Carmona. Happy to be with you today. You know, this issue of faith communities and mental health and that intersection, and now add housing to that, has really been growing. I run into so many church leaders who are like, we want to help, we just don't know how. And you know, and how does health fit into all this as well, and your mental health? And one thing I can tell you is that housing isn't an island. It has to be connected to health, to mental health, to transportation, to workforce. It's all connected together if we're going to have healthy communities. So today, we have a panel of people that are experts in this area, in this space, are doing some very innovative type of things. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about kind of opening comments as much as getting to kind of the midst of it. So first I want to introduce Bill Glenn. who's lived in San Antonio for the last 36 years. He's a graduate of the Master's Leadership Program, Class 13, and a member of MLPAA. He served on several boards related to housing persons living with a disability and currently serves on local community boards, including the National Alliance for Mental Illness, San Antonio, and serves on the board of the Urban Alliance. Bill retired from the Department of Assisted and Rehabilitation Services, serving in several roles as an administrator of programs and providing direct services to persons living with a disability. Bill received his Master of Science in Education, specializing in rehabilitation counseling with the deaf from the University of Arizona, and Bill served proudly in the Army Security Agency from 1969 to 1973. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Glenn.
Thank you very much, Mark. Okay, it's my pleasure to get to speak to you today, especially about Property with a Purpose and our mission. You're going to hear later on about a specific project we're doing, but I would like to share just a few comments and thoughts about what has been going on in our community now for over 30 years. And that is places where people living with a mental illness have an opportunity to live safely, quietly, and with access to the full services available in the community, HEB, Walgreens, buses. But more importantly, this is a group of people who, over time, need less and less medical and other intervention kind of supports and transition supports. So what we've learned is that if we build small community clustered kinds of places, we find this to be very amenable to people who otherwise have struggled. And hopefully they need less police service in order to receive mental health services and less interaction with the legal system. Having shared that point, let me share something else. In our community, there are so many organizations who have committed themselves to helping people living with a disability, whatever that disability is. Today, we have mental health very much on our minds, and we find that we are trying to understand who's doing what and how much they're doing. And one of the things Property with a Purpose can do is create a place for someone to live so that they can access those services, so that they can receive the health care they need, as well as community and other supports. And maybe they're not living too far away from their family. Now, having said all that, I really want to leave you with this thought. We have an opportunity here to pull together and create a community-based service program which is readily available to people who need that help. But there's one key piece, and that is they need a sense of fellowship and they need support from people who understand what loving and caring means. And I think we can find that in the faith-based community. Thank you.
Bill, I had a question for you. There's a lot of conversation now in the housing space in San Antonio. I don't know if, hopefully everybody's familiar, but if you're not, voters approved a housing bond back in May of 2022 that provides affordable housing across the whole city. Some of those funds are going towards something called permanent supportive housing, specifically for people who are experiencing homelessness, but a high percentage of those folks are living with severe mental illness or some form. How do you define permanent supportive housing, and what does that look like in y'all's program at NAMI?
Permanent supported housing means you're not in transition. You're not somewhere adjusting to your community and then needing to move into a permanent space. It's the service that's there for you once you've settled in. And those services include case management, they include some therapy, they also include many services which we might call navigation. That is being able to find the funding and the eligibility that you need in order to benefit from these services. The other key thing it is, though, and that is it has a peer support component. And peer support is absolutely vital. If you're living someplace where nobody understands what you're going through or how you might behave, which might be a little out of ordinary, then you can find yourself in a very stressful situation. The other thing is that you're absent that community of people who understand you. What peer support provides is somebody to come along and help you work through those daily issues or some of those more traumatic issues that you might face.
Thank you, Bill. And we'll have some time for questions for Bill as we go through this. Next, I want to introduce Courtney Laverty. Courtney brings over 20 years of nonprofit experience to the THRU project team, where she serves as the organization's CEO. She's worked for national organizations such as the United Way and CASA, as well as grassroots organizations specializing in teen counseling, shelter for foster care youth, and mentoring. She graduated from the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign and went on to earn a master's in public administration from Northern Illinois University. Courtney's commitment to the fundraising profession led her to become a certified fundraising professional, CFRE, in 2020. Courtney grew up near Chicago and discovered the joy of giving back at an early age. Her desire to help others reach the full potential has been a guiding force throughout her career. She and her husband moved to San Antonio with their 3 children in 2015. Courtney serves on the board of Impact San Antonio. Ladies and gentlemen, Courtney Laverty.
He has to unmute the microphone.
You're good.
All right. I want to start by saying it fills my heart with such gratitude to know that our faith-based community and collaborative efforts like Property with a Purpose recognize that more needs to be done to help youth in foster care, and especially those young adults who are getting ready to age out and want to lead independent lives. I need to share some sobering statistics with you, and I'm going to talk about foster care because that's specifically one of the populations that Pastor Stanley wants to serve through his project. On any given year, we have about 5,000 youth and young adults in San Antonio's foster care system. 20%, now let me go back. I want you to remember, these youth are in foster care through no fault of their own. They have been abused, they have been neglected, they have been abandoned. Sometimes their parents have died. And those experiences by themselves are traumatic enough. But unfortunately, when you spend time in the foster care system, it leads to other heartbreaking outcomes, which I'll share with you now. 20% of young adults will be homeless the day they leave foster care. And that number grows to 50% within 2 years. That is staggering. There have been studies done that have shown that half of our nation's homeless population has spent time in foster care. Think about that for a moment. 25% of these young adults will be incarcerated within 2 years of aging out. Half will be unemployed by the time they're 24. Only 20% will enroll in college. And remember, the state will pay for their tuition. And of those 20%, or less than 5% will graduate. Over 70% of young women in foster care will have their first child by the time they're 21. And unfortunately, it's very likely that those children will also end up in foster care. And because I know we all care about mental health, I want to let you know that the rate of PTSD among this population is 25%. That's the same as our military veterans. 80% of youth in foster care struggle with a mental health challenge, compared to 20% of the general public. So I hope when you hear that, my point in sharing that with you is I'm hoping that you feel inspired to start thinking about the role that you can play or your organization can play in supporting these youth and giving them the same chance at opportunities and outcomes that their peers who did not grow up in foster care have. THRU Project, the organization that I represent, we've been serving youth in foster care for the last decade. We focus on those between the ages of 14 and 25 because our mission is to help bridge that gap between foster care and adulthood. We started out as a mentoring program because we knew that one caring and consistent adult absolutely can change the trajectory of a young person's life. But over the last 10 years, multiple hundreds of conversations with the youth that we're serving, our eyes were opened up to the myriad of challenges that they face. And so we've rolled out other programs to try to mitigate some of these challenges. And so that includes life skills classes, teaching them about financial literacy or how to understand an apartment lease, cell phones, something as simple as a cell phone so that they can stay connected to their mentor, their family, their friends. They can get on the phone and schedule a job interview. Via bus passes, because the majority of these youth, they don't own a car. And here we are encouraging them to get a job or to go to college. They need a way to do that. We're really excited this October, speaking of mental health again, to launch our own breakthrough mental health wellness program that will include counseling, individualized occupational therapy, and peer support groups. Because as Mark said earlier, none of these programs like housing is an island, right? You need to make sure that you're dealing with your mental health before you can succeed in an area like a career, your education, or maintaining your home. And then what I really want to talk about, what's most relevant to today, is our housing program. So we have 3 right now. One is our SIL program. It helps foster youth between the ages of 18 and 21 who have opted to stay in extended foster care. Our most popular program is college housing. And as the name suggests, it's for our students at Alamo colleges, UTSA, Texas A&M San Antonio, who have a history of foster care. So as I mentioned before, the state will pay for their tuition. It doesn't pay for housing. And we've got some youth that we're serving right now who have shared with me that they went to 13 schools before they ever got to high school. So you know that they've fallen behind academically. And kudos to them that they even want to go to college, right, and continue their education. But, you know, chances are that in order to get their degree, they need to take advantage of that extra tutoring. They need more time to study, to do their homework. And if they're having to work multiple jobs just to afford their market rate apartment, they can't do those things. Their GPA starts to drop, and the next thing you know, they're dropping out. So we cover the cost of their rent. We give them all their furniture. It's brand new furniture, all their household essentials, so they can focus on getting that degree. But at the same time, we realize college isn't for everyone, so we have a vocational housing program. That's for people who still want to earn a livable wage. They want to do it by learning how to be a mechanic or a plumber or how to operate an ultrasound machine. So it's the same style of program. We cover their rent, give them their furniture, their household essentials until they're done with that certification. So then it begs the question, well, if THRU Project has all these housing programs, why are you sitting on a panel to promote someone else's housing program? And the answer is because THRU Project can't serve every young adult in the foster care system who needs to be housed. We don't have the funding to serve every young adult in the foster care system who needs to be housed. And multiple times a year, we either have to turn people away because they didn't qualify for one of our programs. Maybe they're too old for the SIL program, or they don't want to go to college, they don't want to pursue a vocation, so we have to turn them away. Or they do qualify, but our funding's all tapped out for the year, so we have to put them on a waiting list where they can linger for months. And when they leave our office, we wonder, where are they going? We know they don't have a house, so maybe they're going to one of our local shelters, and thank God we have them. Maybe they're going to couch surf with friends and family for a while, and you just pray that, you know, it's a healthy relationship, you know, that it's okay, the group of people that they're surrounding themselves with. Some live out of hotels, some live out of their cars if they have one. None of those situations is ideal to pull yourself out of poverty. So we are thrilled to be able to partner with these gentlemen here, because that way we have a place to refer these youth to. And we know if we refer someone to the housing program at Abundant Life Christian Fellowship, we know that they will be housed, they will be safe, they will have a support system, and it'll be that much more likely that they can finally achieve their own individual goals. And so what was the statistic that you two shared with me, Mark and Bill, about how many acres are available just within our faith-based community for housing?
Well, my understanding is that we have about 5,000.
3,500.
Yeah.
3,500?
That is a huge untapped resource right now. How exciting. Can you imagine if we can build housing on those 3,500 acres, the lives that will be transformed? Because remember, you're not just transforming the life of the person you're housing, you're transforming the life of their children and the community at large, because we are breaking generational cycles of abuse, neglect, and poverty. A community is the sum of its parts, right? We're all a part of San Antonio. So helping to lift up this population that has grown up in the foster care system is going to benefit all of us. I'm really excited. I love this vision. I'm so thankful to be part of it, and I know you all are too, so I can't wait to see what we're talking about, 3 or 5 years from now. I'm going to pass it off to Pastor Stanley.
Actually, I have a question for you,
okay.
Courtney.
Okay.
So what we find in housing is that probably the majority of the people in our community are operating with what I call old frames of how they think about affordable housing. So they probably think of a high-rise slum kind of situation. But when you look at affordable housing today, it's looks like market rate housing, apartments, and people are really surprised. I'm wondering now, listening to you, what are the frames that people operate with about foster care youth today that really are incorrect?
We do struggle, so we rely on local property owners and property managers to partner with us for our housing programs. And sometimes people hear foster youth and they think, ooh, at risk, they're gonna cause problems, they're gonna steal, they're gonna be violent, they're gonna be lazy, they're gonna damage the apartment, they're gonna bring a bad crowd into the apartment complex. Thanks, but no thanks. And, that's true of anybody,
Yeah.
of anybody, including people who did not grow up in the foster care system. And we try to remind them, these are youth that they're ambitious, they're resilient, they are working 10 times as hard as any of us to just get on even footing with us, right? They're trying to get their degree. They're trying to get that vocational certification. They're trying to provide a better life for their kids so their kid doesn't go through the trauma that they went through. They are motivated to do well. And in our case, we remind them, hey, they've got multiple eyes on them. Their mentor, our case management staff, just give them a chance. That's all we're asking for. Give them a chance. Does it work out 100% of the time? No. But the majority of the time, it certainly does. And I could, spend the next hour sharing success stories with you. So we really have to get that message across. Please, just give them a chance.
Thank you. Yeah, I really wanted to point that out because I think oftentimes that's what we're faced with maybe vulnerable populations, people living with mental illness, people that are coming out of the foster care system. There's preconceived ideas about who they are and what they are and how they're going to act, which are untrue. They're false. And they're false narratives. And so I think our ability to really continue to put that education out there is really important. I am super excited to introduce our next speaker. Pastor Stanley Wilson was born in Omaha, Nebraska, but raised in South Bend, Indiana. He's currently serving as the founding pastor of the Abundant Life Christian Fellowship Church. For 19 years ago, that church is currently located at 5006 Lord Road. He's been in ministry for 35 years. He moved here in '96 with his wife Diane and granddaughter Lynn after living in Louisville, Kentucky for 10 years. Did I say that right, Pastor Louisville? You got it. Yeah. Where he attended school and obtained an associate's degree in substance abuse counseling, where he worked with chemically dependent men for 5 years, an associate's degree in biblical studies. He served 7 years as the staff pastor of children and youth at the Greater Corinth Baptist Church. He retired from the city of San Antonio after 13 years in the Parks and Recs Department, service in 2021. His mantra statement question to encourage all that he meets is, why be a cheap copy when God made you a great original? Amen. He currently is giving leadership to the church for a transitional home for young men 18 to 21 who are aged out of foster care, delayed due to some trauma. I'm wondering when he ever has free time, when free time permits, he enjoys playing with Morpheus, his miniature schnauzer, and he's currently seeking a graduate degree. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Stanley Wilson.
Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope that you all can hear me. A lot of times I don't use a microphone, but what I would like to do right now is to ask you to just turn to the person that's sitting next to you or the person that's behind you and just share with them what Mark just said. Let them know you are a great original and not a cheap copy. Now, why is that important? It's important because I've had numerous years of working with young folks. Ministry is what brought me here. Our church is located at 5006 Lord Road. We're not a large church, and so when we talk about property with a purpose, there's 3,500 different churches that have land that can be used to help offset the issues of homelessness. I've had the wonderful opportunity to go a lot of places in this country. One of our most recent trips was in Seattle, Washington, where we saw a myriad of homeless camps, and now we're starting to see that here in San Antonio. So what does a church do? A church does what it's supposed to do, right? It simply says, I came that you might have life, and that more abundantly. There are mental issues that show up in the scriptures in the person by the name of Legion. And when Christ came and touched his life, he touched his life in such a way that when people saw him, they were astounded because he was clothed and sitting in his right mind. One of the collaboration meetings that we had one day, we had a young lady sitting on our steps. And she was there because she didn't have anywhere else to go. She was working, but didn't want to stay with family because there was trauma that was going on there. I wish that at that point in time, we'd have had our church up ready to roll for her to have a place to stay. So now where we are is we're working on a renovated property and knocking down walls, of which I'm helping to knock down walls and all that kind of fun, good stuff that pastors don't normally do. But when the need arises, you step outside the box and you do what you're supposed to do. So we're happy at this point to be pushing down. Last night, I wish you all could have joined us. We joined in a collaboration of folks at our church, and we literally wrote out passages of scripture where persons can say, you know what, I can't wait for us to have a place to call home. All of us, at one point or another, are going to need to have to say, you know what, I want to be a part of a solution. And I'm glad that our church is being a part of a solution. And so what do you do when you have the opportunity to do, and it seems like it's fleeting and it's away from you? I can't, and I don't want to go into all the statistics and stuff, ditto what Courtney has done and Bill has done. My appeal is to the heart. Many of us are going to churches that can do something. And so I would challenge you to go to your pastor, your priest, your bishop, and ask them, how can we help? And I'm sure that they will come back and say, this is how we can get involved. Because property with a purpose means you got property with a purpose. I know of a whole lot of churches that are in San Antonio that are hoarding properties. They are hoarding properties. They have lots, 2, 3, 4 lots, and their churches are a lot bigger than ours. We're trying to figure out how we're going to get some stuff done, and I can't wait to be able to continue our partnership with the THRU Project and Property with a Purpose. We're the new kids on the block, if you would. We're the genesis. We're the beginning place. And so I'm excited for this to be able to happen with Bill and with Courtney and with Mark, that we're stronger together than we are apart. There's no reason for turfism. Let's get this piece together. I've been homeless before. Y'all ain't hearing what I'm saying. Having to figure out where your next meal gonna come from. You? Yeah, me. And so it all comes together if churches and when churches take a stand to do the right thing, to say, I want to help. I want to help alleviate some issues and challenges. That's when we all begin to get it right. So that's why I ask you to turn to your neighbor, because you won't meet another person like that person that's sitting next to you in the world, right? And so we walk around, we treat each other like we don't know who each other are, but we're great originals and not cheap copies, because we have to go to the place to where we remember we are all Imago Dei. And for those of you that don't know what Imago Dei is, we are all made in the image of God. And we deserve dignity. We deserve a home. We deserve to be clothed. That's the next thing that we have on our list. And so 3-5 years from now, there will be a transitional facility for men 18 to 21 who have aged out of the foster care system. That's where Courtney and I are going to be partnering even more so. And that's all I can say about that. I'm loving looking at y'all as great originals and not cheap copies. Okay? There's a whole lot for us to do. So let's put rubber to the road. And if you know churches with property, tell them to put them churches together. Okay? Thank y'all for listening. Now, our text for the morning is, I'll take my text, and then we'll go to the next place. But I'm just going to mess with y'all for a minute. So.
Thank you, Pastor. Let me ask this question of the panel. Where do you see the potential for all of San Antonio in this missional type of work that we're talking about today? I think Pastor's put a challenge down for us, but from y'all's perspective, what's the potential here in San Antonio?
Well, I think there's tremendous potential.
Absolutely.
First of all, it's an enormous city, and there is property all over the place. We need to do this in a way so that our community understands that not in my backyard needs to be the final answer to everything. That we need to build community where it makes sense. We also need to create opportunity for people who want to individually move around, move up, move over, whatever they want to do, but who have need for some support, to find that support where they're at. So I see that. And the next thing I want to say is, so many of us, like me, have people in our families who we care about deeply, but who are struggling. And it may come a time when they can't live with us forever. But we don't want to abandon them. We don't want to see them having to live in another city or another state. They need to be where we can see them and get to them and help them to find their way and make a life for themselves. And that's entirely doable in San Antonio.
Watch the cup.
Don't spill your water. I'm just excited by all the momentum I feel right now in this moment. There are so many conversations taking place at the city level, at the county level, with philanthropic funders, their eyes are open to this issue. And there are so many options. Yes, there's definitely a need for that permanent supportive housing, but there's a need for transitional housing. I'm excited by that tiny home movement that we were talking about earlier. Gosh. And here's the other thing to think about. So many people are moving to San Antonio, so these problems aren't going away. The homelessness issue, youth in foster care, these are just going to continue to get bigger and bigger. So we need to put our heads together, and we need to figure out a way to help our brothers and sisters. Because as we've said over and over again throughout the panel, but it's true, we're all going to benefit from it. It's just going to make San Antonio a safer place to live and to raise all of our families.
Let me just simply say that the opportunities to do good are always there, right? We're watching the homeless issue gravitate all over nationally as well as globally and certainly locally. But the opportunities are there. And one of the best things to do is to take advantage of an opportunity. There are great and many effectual doors open to us. Of course, there are going to be some adversaries too, but you are always going to be able to overcome the adversaries. Whatever those obstacles are, when we come together, they're solvable. They're those opportunities that allow us to be able to say, that's my partner. And that's the thing that I want you to all continue hear me saying. That's my partner. And some of these issues that are going not only just as homelessness, but there are community issues where persons are fighting against one another. Right? And so it's not just homelessness, it's agitation, it's aggravation, it's all of that stuff that's going on. But if you treat that person like a great original and not a cheap copy, you're helping to solve some of the issues. So it's a great opportunity for us to be able to do what we've been endowed by our Creator to do. Everybody's got some money. Everybody got a nickel, right? Everybody's got a dime somewhere. We just had an opportunity to meet with Commissioner Calvert, a couple of weeks ago. It was a very favorable opportunity to touch base with him. He was signed on and was talking about designating money to be able to help us to get things done. So it's out there. I have a collaborative meeting coming up soon with District 2 Councilperson Mr. Rodriguez, Jalen Rodriguez, and so just confirm that. And so within the next few weeks, we're going to be meeting with him. So there is visibility, there's initiative, there is inertia that's going on, that when we put our heads together, there's easily solving problems. We see things from a variegated viewpoint, but they're all opportunities for you, all of us, to do our part. You've got a earnest part where you need to say, I can do something. I might not be able to lift a hammer, I may not be able to do this, but I can do something. And that's where we are, the Abundant Life Christian Fellowship. Now, watch this, y'all. Last night, we had the meeting. I shared with y'all what we did. We wrote passages of Scripture all throughout the building. And guess who was there? 15 of us, 13 women.
What did you speak to this to?
Did y'all hear that?
Mic moment.
I was about to say drop the mic. You know, I know I get approached by a lot of people, you know, what can our church do? And I think Pastor just laid it out for you. You know, I think sometimes we'll get stuck in grand designs. But what I'm hearing and what I'm learning today is knock down a wall. Pull some pennies together, rub them together, get started doing something. It doesn't have to be a grand design project. The one thing I've learned also from faith communities I think is very valuable is sometimes it takes time. Some churches have to discern what that's going to be. There was a way that Abundant Life got to this population. You know, there was a way that was done, and I think I want to place value and I want to honor that with the churches that are here today that are thinking about this. I've seen some real successful examples because then you get the whole church behind it. You get everybody that's involved, and I think there's real power in that. And I think there's real long-term effort because you want these things to sustain long-term. But don't let the perfect get in the way of progress. Start. Okay, we're at the point now where we got some time for some questions from the audience, and we'll get started. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Alicia, and I'm from Georgetown. We run a small nonprofit called Mommy Support Network. And what we're trying to do is we're preventative in nature. We're meeting moms where they live in low-income housing. That's our focus on it. And we provide peer support groups for those moms. We do an Adopt a Mom mentorship program. And the thought is that when moms are healthy, children are healthy. It all goes together. I would love some guidance from you guys on how I get support from local churches. We are faith-based, but we've had difficulty getting our local church to say, we're going to come in and we're going to stand with you, or at least be your prayer covering. You know, forget the financial part, just be our prayer covering. We've had a hard time selling the fact that although the moms we serve, most of them are single, we can help them and help the next generation by preventing some of the things that we talk about in terms of outcomes. So anything that you can provide in terms of advice on how we can tell that story in such a way that we get the support we need from the local faith foundation.
Pastor, you want to start?
One of the things that we have done is walk the neighborhood, and it is going to be a slow sale. It is going to be a piece that's going to come about slowly. I know that in the next 3 to 5 years, the transitional facility will probably just be getting off of its feet because it's taken us a while to handle this renovation piece. But to go door to door, get in the pastor's face, and if it's a preacher's face, put the word before them. Put the word before them, because they can deny a whole lot of things. We don't have money, but you can't deny what you just said in the word of prayer and then getting in action. The scripture is action all day long. It's community all day long. It's being about intentionality, about being involved in the community. So I would say go to door, knock on the doors, and don't be afraid. Start at the smallest church and then work your way up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, just have a comment. I come from Argentina, I'm Argentinian native, and we have several programs to help with housing, and normally the government provides in past houses for free to some communities. The results there were not good because they ended up selling part of the house, abandoning the houses. So I think it's a good idea for the people that need the house contribute, either building or doing some kind of work to be deserving the house that you say that would deserve the strong, decent place to live. But they need to be some participation from the people that need the help.
Mm-hmm. Buy-in. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, I hear that, and I think you think about the Habitat for Humanity model, and there's what's called sweat equity, where you have to put in time, legitimately put in time in the building of the house to appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
I am really happy that you guys are all coming to the table. My name is Yvonne Phillips, and I'm the program director with SJR Single Mom, and I work with the demographic that we were talking about in foster care that are aging out. Housing and mental health is a huge issue that we work with every day, and I'm just curious, with this planning that you guys are doing for the housing, are you planning on bringing any of the agencies or child protective services to the table, because we deal with that demographic data?
So the question is, as the project gets rolling, is there an idea, is there a plan to bring other agencies and services to the table?
And maybe just to like talk about the need. Like,
Planning, that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
I remember when Pastor Stanley and I had breakfast, the first time we ever met each other, and he was sharing his vision with me. I was on that soapbox saying, yes, it's wonderful to provide a free place to stay, to help people get back on their feet, but there has to be more than that, because there are significant mental health challenges like we talked about. They've experienced trauma, and they're going to need more. They're going to need those wraparound services. They're going to need a mentor. If they're, curious about building their spiritual faith, they'd have the Abundant Life Christian Fellowship right there. They're going to need probably some job training. They're going to need time to figure things out. It's not, you don't go from point A to point B, right? There's going to be a lot of services that they need. So I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure that there will be other organizations that will be brought in, because we know that's what it takes. That's what it takes for sure.
I would also say, I'm glad you brought this up, because when you think about even permanent supportive housing, the secret sauce in permanent supportive housing is the supportive services. It's the ongoing supportive services is what's really kind of makes this work. But I think the other thing I would say, and the lesson I'm receiving over and over again from Courtney and Pastor, is you got to meet people where they are first. So you can come in with the whole suite of services, and that might not mean a thing to a person that you're serving. So you really have to understand that. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hi, I am Pastor Maribel from Emmanuel, the West Side. We are looking to use our land in the back space, and I know that this is a purpose that I am here. But I want to check these orders, examples of partnership, because we know about the lease, but I saw the another 3 areas that we can help.
Yes, we'd be happy to talk to you and share a little bit more about what we're doing. I think Bill's chairing the committee that's working on this. So, Bill, you want to?
Yes, we look forward to talking to everyone who's interested in using their land for the purposes of housing or transition. We think this is a wonderful idea. It doesn't need to be a big piece of land either. So we're more than happy to do that. I'd like to comment a little more on some of the things that have been shared here. We find in our community a kind of a graduated service when it comes to transition. We have some transition programs which have a very fixed period of time, very things they want to get said and done. We have others that are more flexible, allow you more and more time to make that transition. And that's the piece of this that we know we need to see more of. Some people go through in 6, 8, 9 months. They seem to acclimate real well. They seem to go out there and make use of community to help them to sustain themselves. Others, it takes years. And our friends at Haven for Hope have some experience with that, and they learned a lot. But it's finding the housing for that extended stay and transition, which is another thing that you all might think about. People will not live there the rest of their lives, but they may live out there for a couple of years. And we'd appreciate you thinking about that. I saw a hand go up.
Pastor, we'll get with you after this. Yes, sir.
So when you mentioned tiny home and retirement plan, and so my question for you would be, what constitutes a tiny home? 2,400 square feet?
We have an expert.
Edward, what constitutes a tiny home?
I'll share our model of tiny homes. So they're anywhere from 350 to 500 square feet. Our tiny homes are right under 500 square feet, so about 460 square feet.
They're awesome. I toured it. It's really cool.
Awesome. Hi, yes.
So I feel like what you guys are describing is this movement of congregations thinking about how to use their church properties, right? And I was just curious, kind of from you, Pastor, all the way to Mark, what do we think needs to exist in San Antonio to continue to see growth in this movement? What things need to be a part of the system from an individual church level all the way to the city level? What are some practical pieces that we think need to exist to support this so more can exist 10 years from now?
You want to start?
Infrastructure. I mean, I think we need some level of infrastructure to provide training, support, ideas. Churches, you know, I mean, again, it gets the question of what do we do? You know, how do we start? And so it's kind of like an incubator of ideas. I think, you know, from my perspective, that's the first thing that pops into my head.
I'll just briefly say this. In addition to the infrastructure, we need a commitment and understanding that the support services that are needed, where they're needed, is an accepted operating theory that our government and our nonprofits and all of us can come together and agree to, so that we have community-based services which are close enough, near enough to people to be of some immediate assistance.
To respond to that, the idea and reality of moving to shared vision, because we all see in this room right now the whole room, but we see it from a different vantage point. And so if we didn't move our head and what we saw, we could describe the whole room, but it's going to look different. And so each participating church would have to have a part to where they put it in. It's going to take a sweat, and there's going to take some investment. And a lot of times, and I hate to say it, but you can look yourself in the mirror like Michael Jackson said and say, it's me, O Lord, standing in the need of prayer. And sometimes our churches are at fault. There's the compromise of lackadaisicalness. And so sometimes we have gotten just in this place of gloom. And I'm talking sometimes about larger churches. Smaller churches, we're trying to do. Not to say that all larger churches don't, but there has to be the participation of shared vision. And when you start talking about shared vision, then there's the innovation that springs out of that. Like Tiny Village. I went over, and my wife and I went to visit personally. We're talking about a collaboration of agencies where we're connected. My own brother-in-law suffers from mental illness. And so when there's persons within your church and you recognize that that's what's going on, and not always just young people, but it's some adults too, then you start taking some notice to that and you want to do something about it. It's the compassion. That's what this whole piece is. It's the compassion to action. And are we going to have enough compassion to do something? I don't know how many of y'all remember the movie John Q. And remember what his wife said? John, just do something. Amen. Churches just do something, right? If you can buy a box of nails, buy a box of nails. I had a sister to say yesterday, I'll pay for the paint, Pastor. She's a senior on a fixed income. She said, I'm going to pay for the paint for the building. That's one of the ways.
There you go. Ma'am, you've been in the back, very back?
Yes.
Very back, yeah. You had your hand up.
So I want to give a plug to the city and Haven for Hope. I'm actually only standing here today because I was homeless for 2 years in San Antonio. I was lucky enough to live at a hotel during COVID. During that time that Haven for Hope procured with funding. So I was able to have my own room, which a lot of people at Haven for Hope are not privy to that. Mm-hmm. And the wraparound services that I was provided with the partnership of the city totally saved my life. And I could have survived and been a way duller version of myself than I am today. But what this city envisions for the homeless population here and what they're already implementing for people is truly changing lives. Town Twin Village is another, it's not just foster kids. Like, I'm a farm wife from Iowa who got screwed out of everything, you know? And I came here to be by my mom. And then COVID made me lose everything again. You know, and there's people that literally can't even walk. Have you driven downtown? They can't even walk. And they're wheeling out of Haven every day in their wheelchairs or with their
one crutch, or they're coming out of Central Med, you know, with big swollen feet and they don't have anywhere to go, and you feel so bad, you give them your Christmas dinner, you know? So there's a real need for this, and it really does save people's lives, and it makes people like me be able to stand here today and talk to you. And the city is totally on board to help you with this, and so are these other great organizations in San Antonio, which there's a huge culture of that here. And it would really benefit your congregation even to make those connections and broaden your reach that way. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
To the city of San Antonio and Havens for Hope for the difference of what your vision made in my life. And I hope that some of these people are inspired by my story a little bit to maybe make it a priority to them to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can't think of a more appropriate way to end our session than with that testimony. Property for a purpose. Come up here and talk to us about it. You've got some land, you've got some will, and there's a way. Come on and join us. Thank you so much. God bless.